know this story, right? The great myth of the lost world. Atlantis, shimmering cities, advanced tech, all swallowed by the sea. It's the ultimate cautionary tale.
It really is. But, if you actually dig into the sources, the reality is maybe even more mind-blowing than the myth. We don't really need Atlantis.
How so?
Well, we're finding these immense, real, submerged landscapes. There's the brand new discovery in the Aegean, potentially linking Anatolia and Europe. And then, of course, there's Doggerland.
Doggerland, yeah, under the North Sea. And these aren't just like empty stretches of seabed.
Not at all. Think of them as whole prehistoric countries. We're talking rivers, hills, lakes, and evidence of the people who live there being pulled up with some pretty amazing technology.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then, to get into the hard evidence.
Exactly. We'll unpack what we know about these two very different sunken worlds, the Aegean crossing and Doggerland, and explore what they tell us about early human journeys, and importantly, about the sheer scale of past climate change, how it totally reshaped Europe.
Right, let's start with the newest discovery then, because this one, it seems to really shake up the old ideas about how humans moved into Europe from the east. This lost passage in the Aegean Sea.
Yeah, this is potentially a huge find. For decades, the sort of standard thinking was that rising sea levels after the Ice Age created a bottleneck. Early humans would have had to island hop, maybe, or take a much longer northern route around the Black Sea.
But this new research challenges that.
It does. Dr. Gökner Karhan's team specifically looked at areas near Ayvalık in modern Turkey. They targeted places that crucially would have been dry land when sea levels were way lower back in the Pleistocene.
And they found something.
They absolutely did. Get this, 138 stone tools lithics across 10 different sites. And these sites cover a pretty large area, maybe 80 to 200 square miles.
Wow, underwater. That density is incredible. What kind of tools are we talking about?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. They found quite large hand axes and cleavers, but also more sophisticated stuff, specifically levolor flakes.
Levolor. Okay,
Yeah.
Remind us why that's significant.
It's a specific technique. It means the toolmakers were preparing the core stone in a very standardized way before striking off the final flake. It takes planning, skill. It's complex technology for the time.
And these tools, they link to a specific group or time.
They do. They're characteristic of the Middle Paleolithic Mousterian tradition. Now, the really key thing here is that Mousterian tools are associated with both Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens.
Ah, okay, so finding them here on this now submerged land.
Exactly. It strongly suggests that human groups, whether Neanderthals spreading out or perhaps early modern humans moving in, had a viable, continuous land route between Anatolia and Europe. What we see today as islands like Lesbos or Samos, they were just the high ground, the hills on a wide plain.
These are not a bottleneck at all.
Probably not, at least not during the lowest sea level stands. It implies that movement, dispersal, maybe even interaction between different human groups in this region could have been much easier, much earlier than we previously thought. It opens up whole new possibilities for that early chapter of European prehistory.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit with a contrast. We've just talked about solid stone tool evidence for a real lost land bridge. That makes the whole idea exciting. But before we dive into Doggerland, the biggest real lost land, we kind of have to talk about the elephant in the room.
Atlantis.
Atlantis, the ultimate lost world.
The ultimate distraction, maybe. Look, Atlantis comes entirely from Plato. Two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. That's it.
And the consensus among experts is...
Pretty much unanimous. Classical scholars, archaeologists, they almost all agree Atlantis wasn't a real place. Plato invented it.
Invented it, just like that.
Yeah, as an allegory, a teaching story. He used this tale of a huge, powerful, arrogant naval empire that gets destroyed by the gods in the sea as a kind of metaphor.
A metaphor for what?
For discussing politics and virtue, basically. He contrasted these supposedly simple, virtuous early Athenians with these decadent, technologically advanced, but ultimately hubristic Atlanteans. The story's moral is about the dangers of imperial ambition and materialism, not a history lesson.
But the details he includes, that's what gets people hooked, isn't it? The descriptions are so vivid.
Oh, incredibly vivid. That's the genius, or maybe the problem. He talks about Poseidon carving out this mountain palace for his mortal love, Cleito. And then the city itself, these three perfect circular moats of water, separated by rings of land.
With bridges connecting them and tunnels for ships.
Right. Tunnels letting ships sail right into the central citadel. And the materials walls built of red, white, and black rock, then covered in gleaming metals. Brass, tin, and this mysterious, probably mythical orichalcum.
Which sounds like gold, but maybe even better.
Exactly. That kind of shiny detail just fuels the imagination, makes people desperate to find it, to prove Plato was recording history.
And people have looked everywhere, it seems.
Well, they have. The theories are all over the map. Some link it to the massive volcanic eruption that destroyed the Minoan settlement on Santorini Serra in the Mediterranean.
Makes some sense, geographically.
Sort of, but the details don't really match Plato. Others look way out in the Atlantic, like around the Azores. But, geological studies, core samples, show the Azores have been an undersea volcanic plateau for millions of years. No sunken cities.
What about that recent claim in Spain?
Yes, in the marshlands of Andalusia. There were headlines about finding Atlantis' city plan. But Spanish scientists and archaeologists pretty quickly poured cold water on it, basically dismissing it as overblown interpretations, maybe wishful thinking.
So bottom line?
Bottom line, zero physical evidence for Plato's Atlantis. It's a powerful myth, a great story. But the Lost Lands we're really interested in. They're geological fact, not philosophical fiction.
Which brings us squarely to Doggerland. This is the real deal, a factual catastrophe, as you said. Not an allegory, but a huge, functioning landmass that once connected Britain to the rest of Europe.
Exactly. And understanding Doggerland requires understanding just how radically our concept of time, of deep history, has changed. The discovery itself sent shockwaves.
Because people used to think the world was much younger.
Drastically younger. Back in the 17th, even 18th century, educated Europeans were largely working within the biblical timeline. Archbishop Usher's calculation was famous. He'd pegged creation at 4004 BC.
Wow. So you had basically 6,000 years for everything. Dinosaurs, humans, geology, the lot.
Pretty much. That framework, the Mosaic theory, meant human history had to be short. There's a great example in the sources. Around 1715, someone found a stone hand axe near some huge bones, what we call mammoth bones.
Okay.
Their explanation. They couldn't imagine extinct elephants from hundreds of thousands of years ago. So they figured the bones must belong to an elephant brought over by the Roman Emperor Claudius in 43 AD.
Wait, Claudius's war elephants, seriously? And the hand axe?
Just some ancient barbarian weapon found nearby, they assumed. They literally looked at a mammoth bone and a Paleolithic tool and shoehorned it into Roman Britain because the concept of 400,000 years is just unthinkable.
That really shows the power of a paradigm, doesn't it? How hard it is to see outside it.
Absolutely. But finds kept accumulating, like those hand axes discovered deep underground at Hoxne in Suffolk. John Frere, back in 1797, wrote a remarkably perceptive letter suggesting they belonged to a time beyond that of the present world. That was crack in the dam.
And this led to that huge shift in thinking. From catastrophism, the idea that Earth's features were shaped by unique, massive events like Noah's flood,
to uniformitarianism. The revolutionary idea that the slow, gradual geological processes we see today, erosion, sedimentation, have been operating over vast, unimaginable stretches of time to shape the planet.
And Doggerland became kind of the poster child for this deep time.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Especially concerning human deep time in that region. In the early 20th century, Doggerland was still often dismissed as just a temporary land bridge, maybe. But then came one specific, crucial artifact.
The harpoon?
The Magalmo's harpoon. Found in 1932. It was dredged up from the North Sea floor, embedded in this lump of moor log, basically ancient compressed peat.
Okay, so peat means ancient land surface.
Exactly. And the archaeologist Graham Clark recognized the harpoon's style immediately. He said it was of undoubted Mesolithic date. Now, the key thing wasn't just finding a tool, it was finding a hunting tool, embedded in the soil of this vanished land, along with plant remains.
Ah, so proof people were living there, not just walking across.
Precisely. It shifted the focus from Doggerland as just a route to Doggerland as a place, a landscape people inhabited, hunted in, exploited.
And fast forward from Clark finding one harpoon in the 30s, now we can map the whole thing.
It's an incredible leap, thanks largely to projects like the North Sea Paleolandscapes Project, led by Vince Gaffney. They used 3D marine seismic data, the same kind of stuff oil and gas companies use to look for deposits.
But they used it to map the old land surface.
Exactly. They essentially created a detailed topographical map of this lost country hidden beneath the seabed, an area roughly the size of Wales.
And what did they find? Was it just flat?
Far from it. It was a complex, dynamic landscape. They mapped something like 1,600 kilometers of ancient river channels.
1,600, wow.
Yeah, plus 24 distinct lakes or marshy areas, and one absolutely enormous basin, the Outer Silver Pit, which was about 1,700 square kilometers itself. They even identified and named a major lost river system, the River Schotten, which looks like it was almost as big as the modern Rhine.
That sounds like Well, a paradise for hunter-gatherers.
It must have been incredibly rich. The environment changed over time, of course. Just after the ice retreated, it was tundra home to reindeer, mammoth, woolly rhino. But as the climate warmed up, it became temperate forest. Birch, pine, then hazel, oak, elm.
Supporting different animals.
Right. Red deer, roe deer, wild pig, beaver. We even find remains of early domestic dogs because you had rivers, lakes, estuaries, and coastline all packed together. The resources, animals, fish, birds, plants would have been really concentrated in a very productive place to live.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The idea that the people living there weren't just passive occupants, they were actually managing the land.
That's a fascinating and still debated area. But yes, there's growing evidence suggesting Mesolithic people weren't just reacting to the landscape, they were actively shaping it. One key idea involves the use of fire.
Controlled burning.
Possibly.
Yeah.
The theory is they might have deliberately burned areas of dense hazel scrub or reed beds along rivers and lakes
Why would they do that?
to encourage fresh growth. Young, tender shoots attract grazing animals like deer and aurochs. So by burning, you create better feeding grounds, better browse, which concentrates the animals you want to hunt in predictable spots.
Making hunting easier and more reliable.
Exactly. Some researchers interpret this as a kind of landscape management, maybe even nascent herding. It's a sophisticated manipulation of the environment, suggesting these Mesolithic groups were maybe less nomadic hunter-gatherer and more landscape engineers. It's a step towards the kind of intensive resource management we see later with farming.
And we have examples of similar lifestyles from sites that aren't underwater.
We do. Sites like Rewrote on the coast of Northumberland in Britain show a Mesolithic settlement that was pretty much semi-permanent. People live there year-round, exploiting rich coastal resources. It gives us a good analogy, a proxy, for what life might have been like on Doggerland's lost coasts.
But even that incredibly rich land couldn't last forever. The sea kept rising.
It was relentless. The loss was gradual overall, happening over thousands of years as the ice sheets melted. Doggerland shrank, became a complex of islands, but then came the knockout blow.
The tsunami.
The Storega Slide tsunami. Around 6100 BC, a truly enormous section of the seabed off the coast of Norway collapsed a submarine landslide. It triggered a massive tsunami that raced across the North Sea.
And any low-lying islands left in Doggerland?
Would have been completely inundated, wiped out. Must have been an unimaginable catastrophe for anyone living there. Britain finally became fully separated, an island, around 5500 BC. But that Storega event, that was likely the final brutal end for Doggerland as an inhabited place.
And it's just fascinating, isn't it, that the source mentions this idea that echoes of such ancient land loss might persist in folklore, like Celtic tales from the west of Britain about lands sinking beneath the waves.
It's speculative, of course, but powerful. The idea that such a traumatic, landscape-altering event could be encoded in oral tradition, passed down for literally thousands of years. It's quite something to consider.
Yeah. And, zooming out, Doggerland wasn't unique in this. Its drowning was part of a much bigger global story of sea level rise after the last ice age.
Right, there were other huge areas lost.
Absolutely. Think about Beringia, the land bridge that connected Siberia and Alaska, allowing the first peoples into the Americas. Or Sunderland in Southeast Asia.
Sunderland.
Yeah, a vast area that joined up modern-day Malaysia, Indonesia, Borneo. It had huge river systems, like the Malangraph River, now completely submerged beneath the South China Sea. So Doggerland fits into this worldwide pattern of lost worlds drowned by rising seas. And the lesson there is pretty stark, isn't it? These vast coastal plains, centers of human life for millennia, are incredibly vulnerable to sea level changes, which feels pretty relevant right now.
It's directly relevant. The story of Doggerland is ancient history, yes, but it's also a preview. We're currently looking at projections of maybe, up to 50 centimeters of sea level rise by 2100, maybe more.
Which puts coastal communities today at risk, but also it threatens the archaeological sites from that last great sea level rise.
Exactly. There's a real irony there. The very thing that preserved Doggerland, the sea, now facilitates threats to its buried archaeology. Modern threats.
Like deep sea development.
Precisely. Particularly things like massive offshore wind farms. The London Array, for example, covers hundreds of square kilometers of the former Doggerland landscape. Building those huge turbine foundations inevitably disturbs the seabed sediments where archaeological sites might lie.
So we risk destroying this history before we even find it.
That's the danger, which is why archaeologists are developing new strategies. Things like red flag mapping.
Red flag mapping.
Yeah, it's a way to manage the risk. You combine maps of known threats, like the footprint of a planned wind farm, with maps showing the archaeological potential or uncertainty of an area. Where a threat and potential overlap, you get a red flag. It helps heritage managers prioritize surveys and mitigation efforts, trying to ensure these incredibly valuable, fragile sites aren't just churned up and lost forever.
So, wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway? We started with Atlantis, this glittering myth.
And we ended up with the hard, muddy, but ultimately more fascinating reality of actual lost lands. Doggerland, a huge Mesolithic heartland teeming with life. The Aegean Bridge, a crucial Paleolithic migration corridor. These aren't fantasy kingdoms.
They're real places that fundamentally change how we picture our deep past, right? How ancient people moved, how they lived, and how profoundly climate instability shaped their world and ours.
Absolutely. And, the mapping of Doggerland gives us the geography, the rivers, the lakes. But the truly powerful connection comes when you think about the potential for finding direct evidence of life. Footprints preserved in ancient mudflats.
Like those found at coastal sites elsewhere. Men, women, children.
Exactly, that emotional link, as one source puts it. If we can recover the detailed landscapes of Doggerland, maybe even those footprints, what other stories are still buried? What's waiting in the deep sediments of Sunderland or Beringia or along that Aegean pathway? What parts of human history, hidden by the waves, might still rewrite our timelines again?